This episode of the 7-4A Division I show is brought to you by Granny's Bakery, located in Salina at 401 West Pecan Street. You can give them a call also at 469-352-8806. Find them online at grannyssweeties.com. That's Granny's with an S and then sweeties.com. And if you want to order your cake online, that's where you do it. And I'll tell you what, she can do a standard cake, just a regular old, hey, this is a happy birthday. Or if you want to do something more custom, talk to her and she will take care of it. Also, follow them on Facebook. Now, I say this for every company that advertises with us if they have a Facebook page, but especially if you want to get your tumbly rumbling, you want to see some good confections, you want to see some good cakes, you want to see a lot of cool, good other things you can see, then you want to check out their Facebook page. That's Granny's Sweeties, Cakes, and Confections. And we do appreciate them for being the title sponsor for the 7-4A Division I show in 2023. Finally, it's time to talk 7-4A Division I. Hello, everybody. Terry Bennett here on the inaugural 7-4A Division I football show right here on the S2S Sports Network, part of L4 Media, all brought to you by Granny's Bakery right there in Salina. I know you just heard the ad read. I know how I said on there, you need to go to their Facebook page. You really do if you love to look at breads and stuff, as I'm staring right now at a post from Granny's Bakery from earlier this week. Her sourdough rolls. Oh my goodness, they look delicious. Anyway, we're going to be talking 7-4A Division I here this year. Now, how we're going to do this week's show is kind of just more of an introductory of what we're going to do, and we'll talk a little bit, of course, about the first week of the season. But basically, this show is all things 7-4A Division I in football. Now, if you're just now finding the show and you don't know what 7-4A Division I is, well, I question why you're listening, but hey, thanks for joining us anyway. But 7-4A, of course, is Salina, Carrollton, Ranchview, Dallas Carter, Dallas Pinkston, Frisco Panther Creek, North Dallas, and Wilmer Hutchins. And those teams will be playing each other and a couple other teams in the non-district, and we're here to talk about it. So each and every week, that's what we'll do. We'll either be, sometimes it'll just be me, like in this episode, or I might bring over Grant Goodwin from Sideline to Sideline, the Class 4A show, which you can hear on this network, on the website, s2sgrantandterry.com, or on every podcast platform. Sometimes it'll be a coach from the district, and then sometimes it'll just be a random media member covering one or all the teams for the 2023 season. And I think this district's going to be really fun. I first off, again, want to thank Granny's Bakery, because this is a show idea that I've been wanting to do, and this is the first full one that we're going to be doing. And so I'm really, really excited to see where this show goes, because I think it's interesting and I love our coaches' shows, but I think it's really interesting to also be able to talk a whole district as the season unfolds, especially a district like this, 7-4A Division I. I know everybody looks at Salina, and they should, and they are the prohibitive favorite. But I'm going to tell you what, man, right below them, with Carter, with Panther Creek, with Wilmer Hutchins. And Wilmer Hutchins seems to be the team that will decide what this district is, if this district is just one or two teams at the top, or if there's depth in this district. And the reason I say that is it just feels like they've been a team stuck in 5-6, 6-5 land the last few years. And I think a lot of us thought when they came back as a program and as a school, they would be really, really competitive. And they were that first year. They went 9-2. But since then, they've just kind of been stuck in that fair to Midland range. And so if they can pick it up and make a little run in the playoffs, I think Salina's going to make a run. Carter, we'll see. Carter's another team, man. They come back with a lot, but it also feels – and they went 9-3 last year. So I'm not trying to claim that they've struggled, but it feels like they've underperformed at times. So we'll see what Coach Spencer Gilbert has for them. They have everybody almost coming back on offense. They have a really good, big offensive line. They have a really good running back in Caden Landry. Talent-wise, they might be the second most talented team, and they might even rival Salina in that. But for them, it's going to have to be that consistency. How are you going to play week in and week out against all the teams? Because when you look at what they did last year, they had some really good games. But then against Salina, they just absolutely get throttled 55-13. Then they beat Wilmer Hutchins at the end of the season in a really good game to end out district. Then they beat Sulphur Springs in a shootout. And then against Lake Worth, they get beat 7-2. So, with Carter, it's just about being consistent. And I do think last year getting that first playoff wins in like 4 or 5 years, I think that was huge for them. And they'll start the year off against Houston Yates. Now, this is one of those games that on paper sounds amazing. When you think of the 80s in Texas high school football, you think of the early 80s Yates and considered one of the greatest teams ever. And you consider, of course, 88 Dallas Carter, one of the greatest / controversial / inspiring / et cetera teams in Texas high school football history. And so on paper, it sounds good, but both of these programs, they've fallen. How much have they fallen? Well, back then they were both 5A, and now they're 4A and Division I, and they're just not as consistent. Carter has been better, though. And last year they were able to throttle Houston Yates 46-26. Salina, they'll open the season up hosting Paris. You want to talk about a Jekyll and Hyde team? That's Paris. The last 5 years, at times it feels like they're ready to knock on the door and become a state power, and at other times they're just barely surviving. Last year, the Bobcats throttled them 45-14. Frisco Panther Creek. Now they're an interesting one. They return everybody. Last year was their first year as a program. They made the playoffs, but they only went 3-8. And in this district, you can do that. Now, in saying that, they play a really tough non-district schedule. They'll end non-district with Aubrey. We'll be talking about them some this year. But they'll start the year off against Frisco Independence. And again, last year, this was a program starting off. They went 3-8, and they lost to Independence 49-14. In fact, they didn't get their first win till district. It was against North Dallas to begin district. And so we'll have to see what Clint Surratt does there. Now, I'm going to tell you what, talent-wise, they've got it. Braxton Roberts at quarterback, Miles Meldrum at wide receiver, a great tandem. Gary Sims at running back, Centel Simpson, a guy that they're going to play all over the field, big and fast. And so this team, the talent is not the issue. Neither is the coaching. It's just a new year program. And so they've got to kind of go through those growing pains. Not everybody can start out like Brock and be contending for a state championship in year one. And so where will Panther Creek be? Again, talked about Wilmer Hutchins. They start the year off against Fort Worth Dunbar. In what a lot of people is considering a pick'em game last year. Wilmer Hutchins rolled Dunbar 45-19, but Dunbar is supposed to be better this year, so we'll have to see how that goes. And then you have a team like Carrollton Ranch View that's just I think 2019 they actually had a pretty good year. They were 8-3 or 9-2, and in fact, if I remember correctly, Salina beat them in the first round of the playoffs. And a lot of the reason they were 9-2 was the district they were in, because they were in that Dallas district with Hillcrest and Hutchins and North Dallas and Carter, and so. What can they do? Richard Leonard and his squad, they return a bunch. I think it's like 16 starters. Jalen Reed, who's really good on both the offensive side and the defensive line, even though he's a little undersized. They have a real good talent in Jason Samuel at wide receiver. Their issue is outside of a couple key players, they're just not real big. And that's going to be an issue when you're playing a team like Salina, who has some road graders. When you're playing a Panther Creek team, who again, second-year program, but their numbers are big. They return 22 starters, and they have a lot of size. And so that's where Carrollton Ranch View gets kind of caught up. They're just in a really tough district as far as matchup-wise. Now, they'll start the year against Paris North Lamar. Last year, they lost that game in a close one, 17-14. And Paris North Lamar, they're continuing a rebuild out there, and they're doing a lot of good things. So that's going to be a tough game for Ranch View. North Dallas, a couple years ago, they made the playoffs for the first time, and it was a great story. Unfortunately, they had to play Melissa in round one, and that was pretty tough. They're a team this year. They returned 17 starters. But they're a lot like Ranch View. Size is an issue at key positions. Now, they have some good players. Samarian George plays both ways, tight end and defensive end. He's pretty big, but he's not got a lot of weight on him. Quentin Murphy at quarterback, how he develops is how the season will go. That's where everybody, we all say that it's in today's football, and it's really always been that way, but especially today, how the quarterback plays is how the team goes. Carlos Perez, his second year here. Let's see if he's able to get that foundation laying. And if he is, they're a team that can fight for that bottom half, that fourth spot. I mean, the way I look at it, it's going to be Salina, and I still think it's Salina by a few leaps and bounds. I'm interested in that Carter Panther Creek battle for second and third. But after that, man, if Wilmer Hutchins plays up to what they're able to. In fact, if they play up to what they're able to, they could end up being second, third, or third. But if they're not, that bottom spot's there for a North Dallas, for a Carrollton Ranch View. And so it's going to be interesting. Pinkston, on the other hand, they have really, really struggled. I think I read something where they've only got 13 or 14 wins since 2018. Now, last year they were 6-4, but again, you have to look at their schedule and who they played and see when that 6-4 was, because they beat Wills Point, they beat Gateway, they beat Seagoville, and they beat Arlington Newman, and then they got in the district and they didn't win a game again until they beat Ranch View in the fourth week, and then they beat North Dallas to close out it. Oddly enough, in their 2 wins, they gave up no points in district, and in fact, in their 6 wins, 4 of their games, they shut out the opponent. Now, again, no, it's who they were playing. But still, Derek Lewis has a bunch of that defense back. And so they are talented. I mean, they held Carter to 32, but I think if I remember correctly, there was 2 turnovers that led directly to points. And so this defense can play well. And you'll hear this a lot from me. For teams like Pinkston, they don't have to beat the Salinas of the world. They don't have to beat Panther Creek. They don't even have to beat Carter. You just have to beat everybody else. And that's your path to the playoffs. It's not a movie where they're going to have to play Salina and beat Salina to get into the playoffs. If they do what they're supposed to do against the teams that are on their level, they can make the playoffs. And Salina has aspirations of regions and states. It's okay to say that, a team like Pinkston, their aspirations are simply get into the playoffs, lay that foundation in, get into the playoffs, and then you can build your program from there. All right, that's going to do it for this week. Normally these shows will be 15 minutes to 25 minutes, depending on if it's just me or if, we have a guest on, a coach or anything like that. Not having stats to talk about and things like that on this first episode kind of shortens it. And also, again, I just mainly wanted to do this as an introduction to what this show will be in 2023. And again, we so want to thank Granny's Bakery in Salina for being our title sponsor. Find them online, grannysweeties.com. That's an S after Granny, and then, of course, another S for sweeties.com. If you want to order a cake, it can be just a normal cake, or it can be something custom. Check them out. And they have great breads. They've got chocolate chip banana bread. I didn't even know that was a thing. Did you just create that? I think Granny's just created that. And they have cookies that just absolutely will just water your mouth when you're just looking at them on Facebook. And I'm seeing some of the cakes. And again, check them out on Facebook, facebook.com/Granny's Sweeties, Cakes, and Confections. Give them a call, 469-352-8806. Until next week, I'm Terry Bennett, and this has been the 7-4A Division I show, brought to you by Granny's Bakeries on the S2S Sports Network, part of L4 Media.